I had to I had to do this the way Kendrick Marshall does it, or it wouldn't feel right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special live post MEAC tournament edition of HBCU Sports Live. I'm your host, Chris Stevens. Let me go ahead and send this uh post out to let everybody know on Blue Sky that we are live as well. So if you guys want to tap in, you are more than welcome to do so. Thank you all for tuning in. Before we get started, would like to remind you all that you are welcome to subscribe to this channel. You can become a level 1 or level 2 member, where you can get all the perks of everything that we do here at HBCU Sports. We also would like your donations. We need your donations, to be quite honest. Donate. You can go to donate at hbcusports.com through the Zelle app, or you can just go straight to the website, hbcusports.com/donate. So you can donate to us there. Be sure to follow us on all manners of social media. We are on X, TikTok, Threads, Facebook, Instagram, and once again, as I mentioned, Blue Sky. Just search for HBCU Sports. Wherever you can find us, we are there. So now that the intros and the proper introductions are out of the way, Norfolk State. I don't think it was a surprise that they swept, but they swept. The men won the men's championship. Let me get this microphone in front of my face correctly so y'all can hear me better. So yes, Norfolk State's men beat South Carolina State at the last second, 66-65. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to start with the Norfolk State women. And it wasn't a complete breeze for them in this tournament, but it was a breeze enough. They defeated Howard just about an hour ago, 68-56 to win their third straight MEAC championship. And with 30 wins and 4 losses and wins against SEC opponents, I would think that would give them a. Can y'all hear me? Can you guys hear me? Am I tripping? But yeah, I just want to make sure my microphone works and I'm not talking into dead air, or make sure I'm not on mute like Kendrick likes to do. So you won't catch me slipping like Kendrick, folks. I'm sorry. But Norfolk State, their tournament position, I would think, has to be nothing below a 14 seed. I mean, they're 30-4. And when you take into account the teams they've beaten, yes, Missouri and Auburn were below 500 teams, but those are the games that HBCUs normally don't win. And for Norfolk State to beat 2 SEC schools is huge. They also beat North Carolina A&T, who was the Coastal Athletic Association champions. They got knocked out in the quarterfinals by William & Mary, a team that they beat by 25 points just about a week ago. That's why you say anything can happen in a tournament situation. It really doesn't matter what you do in the regular season. It's what you do in a tournament that matters. And it's disappointing because a lot of us, we were pumped for 3 HBCUs on the women's side making it to the Division I tournament. We thought, we were going to get a MEAC and a SWAC school, obviously, but we thought A&T had what it took to win the Coastal this year. Unfortunately, it just wasn't to be. But still, that's a big win for Norfolk State. And then when you take into account that a lot of the teams on their level have lost in their conference tournaments or are losing in their conference tournaments, that gives you reason to believe that this team should not be anything below a 14. But let's talk about the game, and let's talk about Norfolk State's dynamic duo of Mimi Wheeler and Diamond Johnson. And Diamond, I think, is an interesting case from the perspective that she wanted to come to Norfolk State. Like, this wasn't anybody dragging her. This wasn't a last resort for her. She wanted to go to Norfolk State. And I think that says a lot about not just her, but what Larry Vickers has built at Norfolk State. And live for hoops. She had a great quote on Twitter. She said, "I hope the folks in Norfolk loved Vickers while they have him, because he's gone after this year." And as disappointing as that might be, it probably is going to happen, because I mean, when you look at what he's done, 3 straight NCAA tournament appearances, 30 wins this year. I think that's the most in Norfolk State history. It might be the most for a MEAC women's school. I could be wrong, but they've won. I mean, they win. That's all they do is win. That's why they play that godforsaken DJ Khaled song. I've heard that song twice today from the Norfolk State green and gold marching machine. And I mean, I love their band. I just don't like that song. I'm tired. When you've covered high school sports and college sports as long as I have, people playing All I Do Is Win at the end of every game they win. It's just like, come on, y'all can't find something else, really? But Vickers is one of the most talented coaches not just in the HBCU space in women's basketball, but in women's basketball, period. And I don't think that Norfolk State has the same hometown appeal that Jackson State had in keeping Tamika Reed as long as they were able to keep her. And that's not a knock on Norfolk State. That's more in tune to what Jackson State was able to create with Coach Reed and her being a Jackson native and all of those good things. But I don't see a way that Norfolk State keeps Larry Vickers or Robert Jones, to be honest with you. Because the PWIs and the Power Fours and the mid-majors, they're going to come calling. When you look at what Vickers has done with the women, what Robert Jones is doing with the men, we get mad. I mean, we talked about this on Monday, and we'll be back this coming Monday with some special announcements, by the way. But we talk about this all the time. But we talked about it with Eddie George leaving Tennessee State for Bowling Green football. If you win at an HBCU level, people are going to, come calling for you because they feel like, wow, if they can do that with limited resources, imagine what they could do if we give them resources. And it stinks because why not give HBCUs more resources? But we know how that's going. I mean, the woman who used to run WWE is the head of Department of Education. That should scare the daylights out of everybody. But back to basketball. Norfolk State, they had some up and down moments in this game. I think what really saved them was the fact that Howard turned the ball over 21 times. Every time it seemed like Howard would get close, they would just make an unbelievable, like a pass that just has you like, what are y'all doing? And then there would be an offensive foul. There would be, a long range shot that was maybe beyond a player or two's capability that just didn't hit anything. And Norfolk State took that team rebound back down the floor with it. So, and it's not to say that Howard wasn't a worthy opponent. That's the last thing I want to say, because Ty Grace did a wonderful job with that team this year. She had Destiny Howell back. If Destiny Howell plays in 2024, it's probably a different story. It's probably a different story than how that MEAC championship game turned out. But of course, Destiny Howell tore her ACL before the season even started last year, which really stunk because she was preseason player of the year, and it felt like that she was going on a major run. She still had a great year this year, though. So kudos to her for coming back. But that Howard team was definitely a worthy opponent. They were down 13-2 in the first 2 or 3 minutes. And I said, wow, Norfolk State is really about to blow their doors off. But in the words of Lee Corso, Howard said, not so fast, my friend. Sanaya King started hitting buckets. The player I came away most impressed with from Howard was Zanaya Thomas. She transferred from a University of Kentucky this past summer. And when you get an SEC caliber player and she steps in and is an SEC caliber player from a MEAC perspective, that gives your team an added bonus. Zanaya Thomas played very well this entire tournament for Howard. I also came away impressed with Niall Miller. She's kind of slight in, build, but she's got the height. She's got the quickness. But neither one of those girls could do anything with Mimi Wheeler. Like, she was on 10 the entire game. 19 points, 7 rebounds, 6 block shots, 4 steals, and a three-pointer to boot. I mean, I didn't know that she could shoot a three-pointer, but she shot that thing with confidence from the top of the key, knocked it down. It was so funny because I was watching this on ESPN News. I didn't have a chance to travel to Norfolk, maybe next year. But on the TV, it looked like Larry Vickers was celebrating her knocking down the three, but he was really just trying to get a timeout. So that was really funny to watch in real time. It was like, wow, Vickers is really amped up. But then when everybody started going to silence, like, oh, he just wanted a timeout. Or maybe he did celebrate. I don't know. I'm not going to put that on that man. But regardless, Diamond Johnson, like I said, she's an interesting case from a WNBA perspective because she's listed at 5 for 5. And those of us who are wrestling fans, we know that all wrestlers are not their listed height or their listed weight. Sometimes they're shorter, sometimes they're bigger, sometimes they're smaller. I don't know if I can give Diamond 5 for 5. I don't know. But what I can give her is 2-time MEAC Player of the Year. Probably a trendsetter for Division I level girl talent, taking a longer look at HBCUs. And she's going to have her say of things in the NCAA tournament. So I think if a WNBA team really wants a guard who can do a little bit of everything, and the size, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. So let me see what these guys are talking about. The chat window just went off. sorry, our guy Jared Hoffman is giving D2 coverage. I thought they were watching and giving me pointers or whatever. I got this. But yes, Diamond Johnson, I feel like if a WNBA team needs a guard that can do a little bit of everything and they're not really worried about her height because it's clear that she's not, then the WNBA team will be really smart in picking her up. And I think the same goes for Mimi Wheeler. I mean, I don't know if I would call her an undersized big per se, but I think the best comp I have from her from a W perspective is Maisha Hines-Allen. If you're a Washington Mystics fan, you know who Maisha Hines-Allen is. You know, they just traded her to Minnesota in the middle of the season last year, but Mai was a really important part of that Wizards 2019 team because she wasn't the biggest post player, but she was very aggressive, you know, didn't give a quarter, didn't give an inch, could knock down the outside shot. Very talented ball player. And I think that's the same thing for Mimi Wheeler. And shouts out to Alex Hines. Diamond is one tough player. Don't back down with nobody. You need that. You need that at any level. Because Natasha Cloud was on Ryan Clark's players show, whatever it's called. I mean, I don't watch it enough to get to know the name, but I know there was a clip. There's a clip of Tasha circulating talking about how physical to shouts out to Adrian Cook. He says he's just stopping by to call Alcorn ass. Let's go Jags. So, oh yeah, that's right. The Southern women are actually that game is probably already started. So yeah, Ken Rashad is in Atlanta. If you see or College Park, as it were, if you see Ken Rashad at the at the arena, I forget the name of the arena already, but I want to call it the Gateway Center. But if you see Ken Rashad at the Gateway Center, go and put some money in his pocket because this man is working hard to give you the HBCU sports coverage you deserve, which is done by myself, him, Kendrick Marshall, Jared Hoffman. You know, we put a lot of work into this, so we really hope that folks will, help us out and continue in this mission. And yeah, shout out to Shanita Taylor as well. Wheeler, she's tough, man. Like, I don't know of any post player in HBCU basketball who gets busy like Mimi Wheeler does. And that's not a knock on any of them. It's just that every time I see her, it's like, she's impressive, man. I mean, she knows how to get to her spot. She's physical enough to where you can't just move her from her spot. And she's deceptively quick. Yes, I just pulled out the deceptive term. You know, we usually say that about white wide receivers and punt returners in the NFL. Deceptive, shifty. But yes, Mimi has deceptive lateral quickness. She has a soft touch around the basket. She can knock down the outside shot. She rebounds. She defends. What more could a WNBA team ask for? So, and I think that's the beautiful thing about the WNBA team, WNBA expanding. I mean, there's going to be 14 teams next year, 16 in 2026, and I think Bussy called timeout down 20 with a second left. Tonight? Or is this something else? I'll let Adrian fill me in on that. But yes, this Norfolk State team, I think the question you have to ask is, where do you rank, this Norfolk State women's basketball team among the all-time greats? That's a question we're going to have to ask probably in the next week or so, because if they get a favorable matchup, so Southern, so that game is already played. So Southern won. Oh snap! Shout out to them Jags. Shout outs to the Southern Lady Jaguars, SWAC women's champions. We'll have more on the full tournament pictures once Ken gets back from Atlanta. And like I said, we'll probably have some special news coming for y'all on Monday as we recap the tournaments, the conference tournaments, to get ready for the NCAA tournaments. But yes, wow. Why are you calling timeout down 20 with a second left? I mean, this ain't rock and jock b-ball. There's not a 25-point shot on the board. It's just not, you down 20. The time for calling timeout probably would have been maybe like 5 minutes before. Just saying. But yes, Norfolk State's women, they definitely earned their way into the NCAA tournament. And I don't think anything above a 14 is unreasonable. They've played really good basketball all year. I mean, they steamrolled everybody in the MEAC, which is what you're supposed to do when you have that level of talent. You acquitted yourself very nicely in the non-conference portion of your schedule, the guarantee game portion of your schedule. I don't know what else the committee could ask for. I mean, unless they went 34-0. But there's not too much more you can ask for from Norfolk State from the women's perspective. So kudos to Larry Vickers for however long he's at Norfolk, Diamond Johnson, Mimi Wheeler. Oh, got to give special mention to the I don't want to call them David Ruffin and the Temptations by any stretch, but Norfolk State's role players played really well tonight. Makoye Diawara, she grabbed the most rebounds for Norfolk State tonight. That let Mimi do a little bit more on offense. Debria Clark came off the bench and scored 10 points. Nia Fields was a menace all over the floor and was the consummate floor jumper. In fact, what struck me as funny starting that game off, actually it was most of the game, was that Vickers had Diamond going off ball and Nia Fields was the point guard. Because if you notice, if you watched any of Norfolk State this year, you know that ball is usually in Diamond Johnson's hands 99% of the time on offense. He had Diamond going off ball today against Howard. And I thought that was an interesting strategy twist. So that's something that I forgot to mention, but yes. Shouts out to John Ben Cunningham, who's also checking in. Norfolk State men and women have been outstanding for a long time. As a Virginia State alum, I remember their time in the CIAA. Not surprised at their success. And we really wish them well in the big dance. Shouts out to the Virginia State men, by the way, who beat Westchester today in the Division II tournament. So give our schools a chance to dance, and we'll show you some new steps. That's basically the bottom line. But yes, the Norfolk State women, we are very much looking forward to seeing where they end up. If you guys are interested in watching, the NCAA women's bracket reveal is going to be on ESPN tomorrow night at 8 p.m. So if you don't want to go to bed just yet, if there's nothing else that catches your eye on television, you can watch that on ESPNU to see where Southern and Norfolk State end up. And we will move on to the men's portion of the NCAA tournament now. I mean, the MEAC tournament now. And Norfolk State, they did not have an easy time of it these last couple nights. They did not. Oh my goodness. The championship game today against South Carolina State. That's where we're going to start. So it's the craziest thing. Norfolk State goes up by 10 with probably about 90 seconds left or 2 minutes left or something like that. You think, well, it's been nice, South Carolina State. I mean, Eric Martin deserves a ton of credit. I mean, he's won MEAC Coach of the Year, but that South Carolina State team was a lot better than any of us anticipated this year. Any of us. And getting to the championship game for the first time in 9 years is very impressive. So that South Carolina State team has nothing to be ashamed of. They deserve all the props, all the credit, and Martin's going to hit that recruiting trail hard, so I can guarantee you they'll probably be just as good next year. But so Norfolk State's up 61-51, and I'm thinking, well, South Carolina State had a nice run. They made it to the championship game. Nothing to be ashamed of. But they came back. It was 65-63. They steal the inbounds pass. South Carolina State player gets the layup, ties the game at 65. I'm like, all right, we headed for overtime. So, unfortunately, how do I put this? The South Carolina State player that tied the game fouled Christian Ings going up the floor. And it was obviously a foul that he wanted to give. It wasn't like he accidentally bumped into him or anything like that. He chased him down and tapped him. And I'm like, did he not know the game was tied? Did nobody not tell him the game was tied? It's like, yeesh. It's a big yikes situation. But for all of that, Ings only made the first of 2 free throws, so it was still 66-65. They still had a chance. They come down the floor. Jalen Johnson had a good look at a 3. He created some space for himself on the right wing, got it off, was just too long. The shot was long. South Carolina State tried to get the offensive rebound, but just wasn't enough time left, and Norfolk State survived, literally. And I think what's probably going to hurt South Carolina State other than that foul is the fact that Norfolk State got to the free throw line 34 times, and in South Carolina State only got to the line 12 times. I don't know if you call a game at the scope home cooking for Norfolk State, but it was interesting how Norfolk State just literally asserted their will in that second half because it looked like they were just out to lunch, which is funny because they almost gave the game away to Morgan State the previous night. Morgan State came back from like a few down and had a chance to tie. And it was in the hands of one of their best shooters. In fact, it was the hands of their best player, Cam Hobbs, and his 3-pointer hit the back of the rim. So it was like Norfolk State dodged a couple of bullets coming into this NCAA tournament thing, but they're in at 24-10. I don't know where they end up. I hope they're not a first 4 team, but I doubt very seriously they're anything higher than a 16. I want to be wrong, but when you look at how a lot of the conference tournaments shook out, like the Coastal, if Delaware had made it, it probably would have kept Norfolk State off the 16, obviously, but UNC Wilmington won at 26-7. I probably think I don't think there'll be anything lower than a 14. Bryant won the American East today at 24-11. So you probably would have to put Bryant and Norfolk State schedules together, put them side by side and say, okay, who would be 15, who would be 16, or maybe who would win if they played each other. So there's a lot to think about when you the good thing about this whole NCAA tournament committee business is that we have a very important voice in the room. That voice is SWAC Commissioner Charles McClellan, who is the chairman of the selection committee. So he's obviously going to advocate for our schools, which helps a lot. I mean, the seat at the table thing really does matter. And that's why, these folks, these fascists are trying to undo DEI because they just don't want our voices to be heard in anything. But having Charles McClellan as the chairman of the board, that really, as the chairperson of that committee, that really helps. But I would be stunned. I would like for Norfolk State to be like a 15 or a 14, but these committees, they have their ways. So Marquise Miller says Norfolk State should be at least a 15. I hope they are. Because they've done the 215 thing before. Shouts out to Kyle O'Quinn in that 2012 Norfolk State squad that beat Phil Pressey and Torian Green and Missouri. That was a fun game to watch. I'm a Delaware State alum, but whenever a MEAC school has a chance to beat somebody in the NCAA tournament, I'm all for them. Whenever SWAC school has a chance to beat somebody in the NCAA tournament, I'm all for it. So we're obviously rooting for Norfolk State on the men's and women's side. We're rooting for Southern on the women's side, and whoever wins between Jackson State and Alabama State tonight on the men's side in the SWAC, we will be rooting for them as well. So, but this Norfolk State team, what Robert Jones has been able to do, he lost the player of the year last year who transferred to UNC Wilmington and is going to the NCAA tournament. He lost a couple other guys to graduation, and then he went and got Brian Moore Jr. from Murray State, who has really come in and been a shooter that they've needed. Christian Ings, we already know his resume as a dunk machine, but what surprised me the most is that he's really nice from the outside as well. Like when you just see the guy making SportsCenter top 10, you figure, okay, all right, he's an athlete, he's a high wire act, and there's nothing wrong with that. But he handled the ball a lot for them. He shot the ball very well. So Robert Jones has done a tremendous job plugging in the holes that come up whenever there's graduation, whenever somebody hits the portal or something like that. And that's why what I said about Larry Vickers is probably going to hold true for Robert Jones. A mid-major or a power forward is probably going to come calling for him sooner rather than later. It just wouldn't surprise me if either of those guys, it would surprise me if either of those guys was on the Eccles Hall sideline next season. And I hate to say it like that, but when you win, like some HBCU coaches win at different sports, the others are going to come calling because they feel like, wow, if they can coach at this level, they certainly can coach at our level. So let's throw some money at them. Let's wow them with the allure of our institutions, and let's see if they bite. And we all in our professional lives, we want to make moves. We do. And I've been a sports writer for 23 years. I may not look like I've been in it for 23 years, but I've been in this for 23 years. And it's always been interesting because you want to move up. I started out working for my school newspaper, the Delaware State Hornet. I interned at local newspapers. I freelanced in local newspapers. My first full-time job was at a free weekly daily in St. Mary's County, Maryland. If you're a Black person, never go to St. Mary's County, Maryland. Ever. I don't care what you got to do. If you got to take a ferry to get to Virginia, do that. Don't go into St. Mary's County. Trust me. It's a place you don't want to be. It's a place you do not want to be. But yes, and I always dreamed because I saw friends of mine, going to the AP bureaus and different daily newspapers, and some folks who get on at magazine outlets like Sports Illustrated or the Sporting News or Yahoo Sports, and then of course now Anscape. I still, if Anscape wants me to freelance for them, I mean, HBCU Sports is where I'm at right now, and that's where I want to be. I love this place. This is the first time in my career that I've worked with people in the same virtual newsroom that all look like me, that all pretty much have the same thoughts like me, and we all covering the same thing. We all got the same goal in mind, and that's to publicize HBCU Sports. But yes, we all want to move up in our careers. That's a fact. So I don't think, as successful as Larry Vickers and Robert Jones have been in Norfolk State, it's got a way in the back of their mind. Could I do this at Virginia Tech? Could I do this at NC State? Could I do this at Clemson? Could I do this at? Well, I don't think Maryland's coming up anytime soon. I think that job only is going to come up when Brenda Freeze when Brenda Freeze is coaching that that Comcast Center in the sky, if you will. So but yes, if you think about it, a lot of our coaches, as good as they are, they still kind of get overlooked because either it's wow, they're too good for an HBCU, or wow, they did that in HBCU. What makes you think they could do that at a higher level? It's tough. It's a vicious cycle, but let's see. Lawrence said they're going to use the net ratings to keep Norfolk State at a 15. And BW Bay 51 says they are predicting the NSU men to be higher than the 16. I hope so. Because I would like to see them against one of these second seeds that are going to come in cocky and feel like, oh, wow, we can make it to the Final Four. We ain't got to worry about the 15. We've seen that happen several times in the history of the MEAC. We saw it happen in 1997 with Coppin State. What was interesting about that game was that South Carolina team, because they had BJ Mackey, who never amounted to anything outside of college basketball, but everybody thought South Carolina was just going to blow the doors off of Coppin State, because I don't even think Coppin State was the top team in the MEAC that year. But that 97 Coppin team just had all the smoke for anybody who wanted it. And it turned out in the first round it was South Carolina. And then, of course, Hampton goes to Boise, Idaho, and beats in 2001 as the 15 and beats number 2 Iowa State, who had Jamal Tinsley and Marcus Fizer. And that was a game I stayed up late watching because I had nothing better to do. I was a 19-year-old kid, going back and forth between whether I wanted to go to school or not. So I was doing little part-time odd jobs. I was home from work for the night. I said, let me turn on CBS, see what's popping. And it turned out that I turned on the TV just in time to watch Tarvis Williams hit that half hook with about a few seconds left. And I saw Tinsley drive all the way to the rim. That thing looked like it was going to hang up there for an eternity. It came off the front of the rim. And there's that great video of Steve Murfeld, legs kicking in the air. His player, it was like a comedy routine almost, how funny that was. But yeah, Hampton won. And then, of course, you had Norfolk State with Kyle O'Quinn beating Missouri. That was a fun game to watch. So our schools are able to do it. And then, of course, you had the year that Southern that wasn't Avery Johnson's team. That was 93. Avery Johnson was long gone by 93. But Southern went in there and beat Georgia Tech, one of Bobby Kremen's last good teams at Georgia Tech. So our schools can go into the tournament and make noise. It's just that they need a fair seed to do so. Like, you can't just keep putting our schools at a 16 against a team that's either going to make the Final Four or the Elite Eight and expect them to succeed. But then again, the NCAA doesn't really want HBCUs to succeed, which is why the portal is just going to really be a mess until we can figure out how to handle that. And hopefully we figure out how to handle it soon, because it's going to be tough. It's absolutely going to be tough. But yeah, overall, I feel like the MEAC tournament this year, I think one thing that disappointed me was how sparse the early crowds were. Like, the later in the day and the later in the week it got, the more people showed up. But you can't really help the fact that you got to squeeze in these games in 3 days. Like, I really wish that back in the olden days, I covered the MEAC tournament when it was in Richmond, Virginia. Tell you how long ago this was. 2004, 2005, both years. There would be times when, because the tournament would start on Monday back then, because of course we had 12 or 14 teams, and you would go to the Arthur Ashe Civic Center, the Arthur Ashe Center, because that's where you would go if you were media. That's where you would go to pick up your credential. And Michelle Jinks, who of course is working with the Celebration Bowl now, that's my dog. I love Michelle Jinks. She was head of comms for the MEAC then, and she didn't play. It's like, you had to, if you wanted your pass, you had to be there. You would have to wait until the next day and meet and find her at the Richmond Coliseum and hope security was nice enough to let you in so you could get to your pass. But yeah, Monday you would go to the Arthur Ashe Center to get your pass. And normally it would be like a playing game. It'd be like the 11-12 or the 9-13 or one of those things. And, the tournament would spread out throughout certain days. Like you would play like a team that was probably in the upper ranks would probably play on Tuesday and wouldn't probably play again until Thursday. And that was, or even Friday in some cases, I think. No, it was they would play Tuesday, probably wouldn't play again until Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. That was how it worked. But when you only have 8 teams, and you're not gonna, it's just pointless to spread the tournament out when you know that you have 3 rounds. You got your first round, you got your semifinals, and then you got your championship round. Just have it in 3 days. It hurts a lot of teams. It really does, because what hurt Delaware State last year, and yes, I'm biased because I'm a Delaware State alum, was that they didn't finish playing North Carolina Central until like 11:30. And then they had to go hit the floor again 1 p.m. the next day against Howard. So, and Road Dog makes a great point. Who else but retired or alums or unemployed can be there for the early week games and early in the day? Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a very fair point. That is a very fair point. Because I know not all schools have the same spring break. Like some schools will go, one school will have their spring break the first week in March. Others will have theirs the second. Others will have theirs the third. Others may wait until the last week of March. Some schools might wait until Easter week to have their spring break. So not every school has spring break to the point where the student body can just dump class and skip class, say, hey, I'm going to Norfolk for the week. That's not how it works. That is certainly not how it works. But yeah, it's just a tough thing. And I think what you have to take into account with that is that it's just going to be hard for people to get to a 12-2 and a 4 game when obviously most people work. And then of course you still got to get off work. You got to go home, change your clothes, do all that good stuff. If you have a family, you have to make sure the family's ready to go. Or if your family's going to stay home, make sure kids are doing their homework. Everybody's fed. Everybody's got their bedtime assignments or whatever. It's a challenge. But I hope that at some point that the MEAC and Norfolk can, sort of work on what they have to make this a more palatable tournament for people who may be, work from home types or on vacation. I wouldn't call Norfolk, Virginia a vacation destination, but still not a bad place to spend some time. I've been there before. I love Hampton Roads area. So, it all depends. It really all depends. But yeah, but the later it got, and I think what really helps is that Norfolk State has such a strong alumni base. They have a strong community of, and I'm going to say this word, and I hate this word, stakeholders. I have to give y'all the story of why I hate stakeholders as a word one day. It's just something that, just kind of rankles me, but for anybody else, it probably isn't that big of a deal. But for me, I just hate the word stakeholders. That's just me. But Norfolk State has such a strong base of people that care about that university that it's no surprise that they show up when their team is in the semifinal round, the championship round. Because there was a really nice crowd for both games today. Nobody went home after the men won. It wasn't like, okay, the men are done, let's go home. It was like, no, the women are next. Let's go. And that's great. And that's something that's going to help this conference grow. And that's probably where Norfolk State is really going to have to start thinking about identifying next candidates who could keep the momentum going. Because if Jones leaves, if Vickers leaves, you have to have somebody who's going to step in and keep these programs where they are. because it's obvious that this whole Michael Vick thing has given people a lot of interest, in Norfolk State. But Norfolk State was already good in a lot of other sports before Michael Vick took the football job. I mean, they've been good in basketball for years. I mean, they were volleyball good for a while. I mean, they routinely do well in track and field and cross country. So, I mean, Norfolk State is a great institution regardless, but the basketball programs definitely have been carrying the freight for the most part. But if Vic has a successful season this year, then you can count on Norfolk State absolutely going through the stratosphere. And BW says, nobody has a problem with the MEAC being in Norfolk until we win the tournament. I don't have a problem with the tournament being in Norfolk. I don't. I just wish that the games were set up in such a way that more people could get to them. I mean, because it's not that much. I mean, Richmond, it ain't that much far difference. I mean, I think what helps though is that the scope is still an arena in reasonably good shape, and it's in a reasonably fun part of the city. Richmond, the Coliseum, it was almost like you had to drive to the end of the world to get there. and again, I loved Richmond. I loved the Coliseum. I wish Richmond had done something to either upgrade it instead of just completely condemning it or have a replacement ready. They have neither. So that's why that's why there's nothing going on in Richmond right now. I remember Richmond used to have a hockey team, the Richmond Renegades. But yeah, Norfolk's a great place for the tournament. I just wish the games were set up in a way where more people could get to them, at least during the early parts of the week. Friday and Saturday, the joints were packed. Not even gonna lie to you. But they weren't making money in Richmond or Winston-Salem. Yeah. I can admit that Richmond was sort of like, I'm from Wilmington, Delaware. And if you guys know anything about Wilmington, Delaware, it's not the most happening place in the world. It's really kind of like a sleepy town. It's a bedroom community for Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, basically. That's basically what the greater Wilmington area, northern Newcastle County, Delaware is. It's basically a bedroom community for people who live or work near Philadelphia. That's basically it. And I don't want to say Richmond is a bedroom community by any stretch. I mean, it's the state capital of Virginia, for crying out loud. But, Richmond reminded me so much of Wilmington back in those days that I actually thought about moving to Richmond after undergrad. I applied to the Times-Dispatch. I applied to the black newspaper down there. Didn't get anything back. Hurt my feelings, but I get it. But yeah, Norfolk is a place where you can make money because there's more things to do. It's a more centralized location, I think, because when you Dover, Delaware, and Orangeburg, South Carolina, those are your most northern and southern points in the. Actually, you know what? I think that's wrong. Because I think Baltimore and Dover are kind of equal on the same latitude, if not just miles away. But regardless, Delaware, Maryland is your northernmost point. South Carolina, Orangeburg, South Carolina is your further southernmost point. You meet in the middle. You probably end up somewhere in northern North Carolina, perhaps. So yeah, Norfolk, not a bad meeting place for everybody at this point in time. So I just want more people at the earlier games. That's just my only gripe, and that's just me. I mean, other people may not feel the same. People are just like, yeah, it's just what it is. People aren't going to take a day off from work or school to come to the MEAC tournament. But if it becomes popping enough, people will. Look at what the CIAA did in Baltimore. The CIAA in Baltimore do big business. Big business. And hopefully they stay in Baltimore, honestly. I hope the CIAA doesn't get caught up in Charlotte trying to, circle the block, because Charlotte did them dirty. So Baltimore welcomed them with open arms. So I hope the CIAA does stay in Baltimore. But overall, the MEAC tournament, to me, it was a fun tournament to cover remotely. Hopefully I get there in person next year. And we will probably be talking more about Norfolk State's tournament prospects, as well as the SWAC winners. Of course, Southern, if you missed that, Southern women did win the SWAC today, 64-44 over Alcorn State. And Alabama State and Jackson State, if you are wondering, doesn't tip off until 9:30. That's Eastern time, by the way. So if you got time, you can go get a snack, you can go get a meal, you can run to the store, or you can take a quick nap. Actually, I'm about to take a nap after I get off this air because I've been up nonstop. I got up early to work out. I've been covering these MEAC tournament games, chopping up with my coworkers. I don't know. You know what? If I take a nap now, y'all probably won't hear from me again until Monday. But yeah, we'll figure it out. But yes, yeah. Overall, what are my general impressions are that Norfolk State earned both championships. Bottom line, they were the best teams all year long from start to finish, and they earned their right in. They shouldn't be anything below a 15. And if they are, we should riot. Okay, maybe not riot, but we should raise a whole lot of cane. But we'll talk more about that on Monday. Like I said, Monday, we'll probably be back to our normal Monday live show. And then, of course, we also have our round table where we talk about other things, HBCU sports, and then we talk about beaten topics off the beaten path on Wednesdays. So once again, you'll definitely want to subscribe to this channel. We keep a lot of good stuff going. And again, we probably have some special announcements coming next week. So y'all be on the lookout for that. So thank y'all for tuning in for me. Greatly appreciate all of you who have commented, who have liked. And again, we invite you to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Follow us on X, TikTok, Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook. Just search for HBCU Sports. We are there. And once again, if you would like to donate, you can go across the screen here. Donate at hbcusports.com. Donate at hbcusports.com on the Zelle app, or you can also go straight to the website, hbcusports.com/donate, and give us a coin there. We'll greatly appreciate it. So once again, thank y'all for watching this random live edition of HBCU Sports. And real quick before we leave, Marquis Miller says, Iona's conference championship, if they win today, I think that would solidify a 15 for NSU. So go Gales. Shouts out to Jeff Rulin. But yes, thank y'all for watching this random live edition of HBCU Sports. We greatly appreciate y'all. As always, once again, feel free to subscribe, donate, like, all that good stuff. We keep this moving for y'all, man. And the more feedback we get, the better the content is going to be. Stay tuned for that. So until the next time we speak, y'all take care of yourselves and each other. We will see you on Monday.